THD here, and tonight we're gonna be talking about the Kindle Fire HDX for 8.9 versus the iPad Air. Now they both have great features and great things, but they're not really the same. And the first thing we have is the weight. The iPad Air is heavier but thinner versus the Kindle Fire HDX, which is lighter but thicker. It's really a weird combination actually, that this is thinner, a big display like this is thinner from the HDX 8.9, but in the same time it's heavier. It just looks kind of weird. But the next thing is the Retina display, which is killed by the HDX display because it has 1 million more pixels. When it comes to performance, the A7 chip versus 2.2 GHz Snapdragon Qualcomm processor and an M7 compressor. You have the 10-hour battery life. I really thought from Apple that they would increase it, and unfortunately no. And instead, but Kindle Fire was doing this, so they got the new 12-hour battery life. You have also the advanced wireless with MIMO, which is something that's very old when it comes to Kindle Fire. The next thing is the App Store. Now the App Store is 475,000 apps for you versus 100,000 apps, which really just isn't a big deal. The next thing after the App Store you have is the eyesight and FaceTime cameras. It's 720p versus a 1080p, and both shoot the same time, but it's the only Kindle Fire HDX with a rear camera, which is kind of a little bit weird. You have the iOS 7 versus Fire OS 3.0, which are kind of a little bit of a new. They're both so new. The next thing is iCloud versus Amazon Cloud Drive. Now Amazon Cloud Drive isn't that much powerful. You just put on it from Amazon content to Amazon content, and photos is just the only thing that you may sync with it. While here iCloud, you can put documents, photos, and even apps are even here from your places. And here is the next thing is the tech specs. So now is the time to reveal some tech information about these two monsters. When it comes to specs, the first thing we'll discover is that you have the price, which is I'll talk about in a second, but let's start with size and weight. And when it comes to weight, as I said before, heavier but thinner, lighter but thicker, which is kind of a little weird. When it comes to Retina display, you have the 2048 by 1536 resolution at 264 ppi versus a 339 ppi with 2560 by 1600. You have an A7 chip versus the 2.2 GHz Qualcomm Snapdragon processor. The next thing, the carriers that support 4G LTE for the iPad Air are AT&T, Sprint, T-Mobile, and Verizon, versus the technical details here for the Amazon Kindle Fire HDX tell us that's only for 4G at Verizon and AT&T. When it comes to FaceTime, it's here at 1.2 megapixel photos, 720p, which is the same, which is a 5 megapixel photo versus an 8 megapixel photo. When it comes to the buttons, you have the port, which is the lightning connector, versus the micro USB port and a micro HDMI port too. The next thing you have is the power battery, which here is for 10 hours of battery life versus 12 hours of battery life. The next thing is iOS 7 versus Fire OS, and you have here tons of great powers and things that both of them, in my opinion, to sum that up, it comes to price. The price is really what breaks these two from each other. Like, each one of those has his own specs, but they're really similar. But when it comes to price, it's really what shines a Kindle Fire HDX. It's just simply less. $179 for it, versus here you take for the 16 gig version, $499. It's the highest tablet with only 16 gigabytes. And here the highest thing, if 64 gigabyte with 4G AT&T and without special offers, is $594 versus the same one is $829, which is really hardware. If we said Wi-Fi only, $494, $699. with special offers and 32 gigabytes, which here 429. 16 gigs of RAM, 16 gigs versus 16 gigs. It's really weird, and I didn't actually. That here's the sum up for all of this. The iPad Air is for people who are still using Apple or have a MacBook or an iPhone. It's awesome for you. It's definitely your choice. But you're someone who's ready for a change, or doesn't, or it's still new in the world tablet. Then the Kindle Fire HDX, it will really is a cheap model and really will be worth it and will stay for you for a long time. And then you may stock it off. You see something new. And it's also have the Amazon account, so almost everyone in America has one, so it will be very simple. Thanks you for watching, and goodbye.